Okay, I've been wanting to post this video for a while. Just finished up all my research on it. And I'd like to talk about playing cards. There's a thing going around where it's like, oh, this is the origin of playing cards. Sometimes it's done with a religious bit, but it's like, okay, there's 13 playing cards, which is the moon phases, and this many pips, which is the days of the year, 365 pips, which is the days of the year, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Let's go historical, and I'm gonna debunk that. It's not true. That's not the origin of cards. There's pretty good solid evidence that it's not. Let's start with that a 52 card deck has 365 pips. It doesn't. It has 220. Unless you want to start counting the more modern cards, which then there's 1 or 2 pips on the face cards. So then you get up to 234 pips, 244 pips. So it doesn't pan out. It wasn't made that way. It wasn't on purpose. It wasn't developed to be that way. The other one is that there's 52 cards, which is for one day or for 1 week of the year. When playing cards were developed and you got to the number 52, it was actually being developed in other places. It wasn't around Europe. And their calendar, they were using the Islamic calendar. It was the 13th century at the time. And the Islamic calendar was a primary calendar being used. And it varies how many weeks. It could be 52, it could be 53 weeks. So it wasn't something that was solid and set. The 52 just comes from that there were 10, 1 through 10, and then they started doing some court cards. And the court cards weren't even the ones that we use today. They used different types. But yeah, if you want to know more about that, just look them up, the Mamluk cards. So the whole story of the deck of cards religion thing seems to come from 1762, which is several hundred years after cards were developed, and even more than 100 years after cards came to Europe. So wasn't one of those things. It was something somebody came up with. I think if that's what you like, that's kind of neat, but that's not the origins, and that's not where they originally came from. And then the suits, originally they were coins, cups, swords, and polo sticks. So it was more of an aristocracy thing than it was a, these are the 4 seasons. And then there's one that they say that the different court cards are different royalty, like King David and such. That's also not the origin. Briefly in the 16th century in France, they did some of that. They assigned some, and there are some decks that do it on purpose, where they drew in specific people, but we do that today. There's a Marvel deck that, Spider-Man's one of the court cards. But there's never a universally accepted standard. It varied by region, it varied by artist. So some of the connections are still kind of persisting, but mostly it was gone by. They were just drawing generic royalty. What did royals look like and what did they do? So origin of the cards, 52 cards, and that wasn't even always the standard. They had 38 card packs. They had card packs with 80-something cards. It just ended up that the 52 card decks, the games were more popular. Last thing I'd like to address is the tarot. Everybody's like, oh yeah, playing cards developed from the tarot. Wrong, it was the opposite. Tarot was at the absolute minimum 50 years after playing cards hit Europe, then tarot cards were invented. And they were not invented for divination. Playing cards were being used for divination well before tarot. It took them another 100 years before tarot really took off as a divination tool. It was originally a game. The extra cards were part of a trick-taking game, and so they were basically trump cards that would beat any of the face cards and any of the pip cards. So yeah, tarot wasn't a big mystical thing. It was for games. The games became popular, and then people co-opted it, started using it for other purposes. And doing the divination stuff with that and with cards and pretty much any other gaming device they could get their hands on. Just kind of ended up was the trend is different gaming apparatuses just got used to do divination because that's what people were into. So there's the debunk. If you got any questions, feel free to jump on in the chats and I'd be happy to answer any of the questions. I've got historical references for all of this. But yeah, playing cards, that whole, it's coincidences. It's not the way playing cards were developed. They were developed in a totally different time and space than what we're thinking. So have a good one.